Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever or whenever you happen to be listening to this. Thank you for listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. I'm your host, Abuja based event and wedding photographer Tavishima Ayede. At the last recording, there was some riffing on the whole thing between uh, your contracting process and your sales processes, and I think I have 2 more days that I want to riff and rant about a number of things. Now, I think one of the reasons why, in this part of the world anyway, was so big up on contracts and the other back end things is because, rightfully so, we're worried about what to do when things are no longer cordial and things have started getting litigious, and you guys are about to get to fisticuffs or there's an actual quarrel. So I think in this part of the world, and maybe in the North American context, that's why people harp on a lot about having your contracts and making sure that your paperwork is straight, because it anticipates, and rightly so, that sometimes there's a breakdown of expectations and relationships, and people are at each other's throats, or people want to run to the courts. Now, my opinion on this is that if you focus on your sales process, you're going to establish a couple of things. One, you will establish a high degree of trust. And then the second thing is you're going to be able to figure out exactly what it is that they need. Now, if there's a high degree of trust and you figured out exactly what it is that they need, and by that implication, you went ahead to deliver to the best of your ability what it is that they actually needed, then the relationship should be cordial and should be non-litigious if everything goes according to plan. So that means that you won't end up in court, you won't end up in mediations, or you won't end up in big quarrels after the wedding, all things being equal. And that's the reason why I emphasize that we start with that first, and with the sales process first. And you will find in Nigeria anyway that a lot of people, realistically speaking, go on for years without the need to have a formal contracting process. And that's not just because they are lucky, but by design, because they have been educated on these sorts of matters, or maybe by luck, they just have a way of doing business that establishes a high degree of trust, and they're very good at figuring out what it is that their customers need, and then they deliver on that. So that's a summary of what my philosophy is on these issues. Focus on the sales process because you'll be able to figure out what they need and give it to them. You'll also be able to establish a high degree of trust. And even when expectations were not exactly laid out clearly, because these things do happen. I remember much earlier when, in my career anyway, it used to be a big thing about social media. Photographers would want to get it expressly from clients that these images that we're going to get for your wedding, we can use them wherever we want, whenever we want. It's our property. Yeah, I have a legal background, and so yes, I can pipe in on the whole thing of copyright law and stuff like that, and image rights and things of that nature. But the thing is, when you're getting into these relationships, no matter how right you are on the fact that you own the images, except if you sign some paperwork where you assign or transfer ownership of those images to them, and you own the copyright and all of that. When a quarrel has broken out, these things just end up becoming irrelevant, and I think sometimes are not in your best interest to pursue all the way to the end. I mean, there are people who have different opinions on these sorts of things. Now, I know a wedding videographer, one of the big wedding videographers in Abuja, who happened to cover a celebrity wedding a while ago. Well, this was actually a long time ago. Covered a celebrity wedding, and these sorts of issues came up. They went to court, and it was covered in the media, and the videographer was able to get his way, and this certain celebrity there's now an order against the celebrity, so the celebrity can't use the the recordings, the images gotten from the wedding, and I know the videographer personally, and it's something that he's happy with. As far as he's concerned, he's hit the right mark. He has made his point, and most importantly, for members of the public have now been educated, at least in his own opinion, about what people's rights and obligations are regarding to the images and the videos that you get from your wedding. And for him, yeah, he says it's a victory for him, and he's happy with all the time and the acrimony that went through the whole process, and all the money that was lost in the process as well, or rather invested in the process, as he would look at it, because lawyers don't work for free, so you have to pay lawyers every time you want to go out and make this kind of a statement. But on the other hand, there are some other videographers I know who think that, well, with his stature and the level of business that he was already at, that he had better things to do with his time, and he should have just let things be, chalked it up as a loss, and kept up with his business. That there was no point in trying to sully his reputation, because some people look at it as perhaps this might ruin his prospects for future jobs from certain members of the elite or something like that, other celebrities, basically. So it depends. Some people look at it one way and say it's good that it happened. He made the point. Some other people say it was a waste of time and it was a waste of money, because really, how much? Even if this celebrity paid you, 2 mil for the wedding, but they only paid 1 mil, you guys are quarreling over the remaining 1, but then you engage a lawyer for 2 million, and then this whole thing takes 2 or 3 years. Like, really, perhaps you'd have been better off just walking away from the whole thing. Anyway, that is an extreme case where you have acrimony. A lot of us are not going to deal with those levels of dispute or acrimony in running our business, because, like in my case, it was something a whole lot smaller. Okay, that actually was the story that I intended to tell before I got off on a tangent. So in my own case, it was a whole thing about using photos on Instagram, and back then Instagram wasn't the phenomenon that it is today. I haven't come across any bride recently that this has been an issue, that, oh no, you put my photos on Instagram. I think it's more commonplace now, unlike, let's say, maybe 7 to 10 years ago, when you wanted to put people's images on Instagram. And so in our case, this was what the issue was, because I was going to use the photos on Instagram, and I just let them know as a common courtesy. And yes, this is one of the reasons why people say put everything in your contracts, because I guess the assumption there is that you put it in the contract, so whether they read it or not, at the end of the day, they signed it, they accented to it, and so it shouldn't solve the problem. Well, in my own opinion, that doesn't solve the problem, because they will just turn around and say, if I had known that was there in the contract, then I wouldn't have signed the contract, and then your quarrel continues anyway, regardless of what it is that they signed or you thought they were aware that they were signing, which is why I focus on having a high degree of trust and being able to figure out what their needs are. Because in the need stage, especially if you have these as questions, you'll be able to find out whether this is a do or die matter with the couple, and if it is, and it's also a do or die issue with you, then it's something you'll walk away from. And if it's something that you avoided or you failed to pay attention to, like in my case, if you have established a high degree of trust, it's going to be easy to work it out without much tension, without much quarrel or the need for litigation. So in this case, I was in touch with the bride, and the bride didn't tell me any misgivings. She just said she would discuss with her husband, and the next thing I started seeing angry emails about lawyers getting involved and blah blah blah, stuff like that. So luckily for me, building up a high degree of trust and rapport has been an essential part of my process from the get-go, although I didn't realize it at the time. So if you remember what the old podcast, one of the older podcasts about what to do when things go wrong and how face-to-face and the phone are better ways of handling it. So in line with that, I just picked up the phone and I called the guy and I'm like, hey bro, what's going on? I saw your email. Like, you guys, calm down. Let's talk this over. And besides this whole thing about lawyers, that it's going to involve more money than it's worth, because I mean, after all, how much did you pay for to cover this wedding? And there's a little bit of laughter between me and the guy. I'm like, let's calm down. Let's talk about these things. So what's the matter? And as it turns out, he figured that I was trying to ride roughshod over his wife, regardless of their opinion, because the groom and I happened to be close in age, but the bride was a whole lot younger. So he figured that I was trying to go through her to avoid going through him, as per she's a small girl, so I'll just be able to bamboozle her, then use the photos on Instagram. And that actually was the main issue. The main issue wasn't whether Instagram or no Instagram. This dude just didn't appreciate the fact that I was trying to oppress his wife, in quote. And it's something that we talked it over, and there was no yawa, and we're still in touch from time to time today. So that's just an example of what it is that you're going to be able to achieve when you have a high degree of trust and you have built rapport, regardless of whatever it is that you sign in the contract or whatever it is that you didn't discuss. In fact, I'm thinking maybe I might need a future episode where I'll have a much more structured approach about these sorts of matters. But anyway, like I said, this episode and maybe the next one that will follow are just more or less rants about the issue. And then after that, we'll just say goodbye to the matter, and then we'll move on to other interesting and exciting stuff. So yes, the focus, trust, rapport, and figuring out exactly what it is that they need. And if all goes well, everything should be cordial, and there's not going to be any need to resort to litigation or any big quarrels or blowouts. Now, whether litigation pays is something that is left for you to determine. Like I said, for my videographer friend, for him, it's a victory. I went to the courts and I stuck it up to these guys, and now they know that they can't mess with us. They can't mess with me. I will not be toyed with. And then for some other people, they look at it and like, come on, how much was the money? I mean, how much did you pay the lawyers? And then really, 2 years, 3 years to make that point. I mean, let's be realistic. In that 2 or 3 years, is it? I mean, of course, it was all over his social media, and he was showing family and friends and everything. I mean, after 3 years, he has shown everybody that he wants to show, and he has gotten all the use out of it that he wants to use. So really, what benefit has it been? It's not like you can go into his living room and stop him from watching the video with his wife or showing the family members when they come. So really, what was the victory? So it depends on you whether litigation is valuable or not. But I guess you know my opinion. No point in repeating or restating it. So thank you very much, guys, for listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. I will catch you guys on the next episode. I'm your host, Abuja-based event and wedding photographer, Tavishima Ayede.